A good horror game is something special. It is not able just to challenge us with its gameplay or tell a good story, but to scare us, to haunt our dreams and idle thoughts, even to make us question our own perceptions of reality. In this podcast, we meet the developers of both existing popular horror titles and hotly anticipated upcoming games to discuss how they do it, what inspires them, and all things spooky and unnerving. Welcome to Talking Terror, the official podcast of the Horror Game Awards.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Talking Terror, the official podcast of the Horror Game Awards. Now, normally when we do this, we are interviewing the devs behind all the fantastic spooky games that we've been experiencing this year and over the years. But today we are honoured to be joined by two of our presenters who will have the honour of handing out awards to those games when we go live on 16th of December. So, I think probably rather than me try and do it and garble the introductions. Do you want to tell us who you are? I'll go with who's based on my screen clockwise. So, Anna, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about who you are, what you do, and also what made you a horror fan?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Anna Webster. I'm a writer and a narrative designer for games. So, as you can imagine, I'm going to be presenting the award for Best Narrative this year at the Horror Game Awards. I specifically really love writing like spooky things because I think horror actually has great transformative potential when it comes to stories. We can address things that might make us uncomfortable or that are hard to reckon with. And I think that's really powerful. So that's where I draw a lot of my inspiration from and what makes me love the genre.
Cool. And Ash?
Hello, I'm Ash Millman. I currently work as a host and video creator for PlayStation Access with a focus on horror as much as possible, as well as content creation across other social media channels as well. So I'm just a general spooky gal. I've always been a massive fan of horror and considered it my specialism, which I always feel like sounds like really like professional to say when really all I do is talk about just weird stuff that I like. But yeah, I've always been a fan. I've always been drawn to just lovely, strange things and how it reflects human nature in the way that it works as well. Feels like a very serious answer. Just really like seeing monsters.
Well, I mean, this is why, was it the BBC who described you as a horror expert? And
Thank you for dropping that in. Horror expert right here.
and I forgot to introduce us. That's how professional I am. Obviously, myself, Phil, and also here with us, Will, your hosts as always, and the hosts of the Horror Game Awards themselves. I mean, on that front, I think we are obviously in a very lucky moment at this point in time because I think going back to the BBC, like they were the last ones to say it, put out an article 2 days ago saying that this is like asking, is this the golden age of the horror games? Because we've seen this huge resurgence recently of horror titles, and particularly 2023 feels absolutely jam packed with stuff. So I suppose that's kind of a good place to start talking about it and say, like, well, A, do you agree that that's what we're in? And if so, when do you reckon it started? What game started the new golden age? So
Ooh,
it's not a
that's a good
quiz.
question.
There's no wrong answers. It's not a quiz. So
I feel like, especially in like the AAA space, I feel like a lot of it might have started in 2019-ish. I think it was 2019, right? With the Resident Evil 2 remake.
yeah,
In the AAA space, I feel like that's when I first really saw it as a resurgence. But um, horror in particular, like often goes through cycles. I've kind of looked into this, and basically when a lot of scary things get made, whether that's like disaster movies or like zombie media, it usually is actually echoing something that's going on in like the actual like geopolitical realities of the world. And people need some kind of like way to process certain things. So it could be like a reaction to, we live in some pretty wild times, y'all. So that could be like one of the reasons why that's happened. But I definitely think we are experiencing a lot of really great titles, like regardless of why. It just makes me happy that people are like, hey, horror is a legitimate genre. It's not just like genre fiction, right? And it's cool and it's fun because it is.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely agree. I think what first came to mind for me that felt like the big horror moment where people were like, "Oh yeah, let's take this seriously again," was like the Resi 7, definitely. Like when it came back with the new camera angle, everyone was like, "Wow, like Resi's come back. It's different, it's new, it's amazing." And then it's kind of slowly built up from there. And you can see it in kind of the film world as well, where people are appreciating horror a lot more. Like horror
Mhm.
goes away, baby. It's always there. And there's always different cycles of popularity with it. But yeah, I think at the moment I that would be my argument is I'm not sure if it's a golden age of horror. I think it's a golden age of people appreciating it more. Like I feel like
Yeah.
it's in the mainstream again, it's in the spotlight again. So the people who
Mhm.
maybe aren't embroiled in it as much as us, like as people who do this in day out as a job, it's definitely feeling like a really exciting time to go to the cinemas and watch horror and kind of find people who also like these films and games and different pieces of media that are like terrifying and new and different. And that's a really good thing. That's a really good thing. Golden Age, I think, is a really interesting idea for it because I always think of the 80s as like the ultimate one because everybody idealizes it as this slasher period of incredible horror movie
Right.
making. And like and then you come to here and like the 2010s and the 2020s version of that is very much the A24 elevated air quotes
Right.
horror model. So it's very different worlds but super interesting to think about all the same.
Yeah, on the movie kind of front in particular, when you were saying that, I was thinking like the difference between your kind of Jason Voorhees type stuff versus
Mm.
like the main thing I think of when I think of like good horror now would be like anything by Mike Flanagan. Um,
Yeah.
like and obviously fantastic stuff, but very different in terms of presentation and I think probably
Yeah.
also who's watching as well.
Mhm.
No, definitely. No, I think especially. But I was thinking about it in the indie space. Um, the resurgence of that, I think, was when Amnesia first came out. Dark
Mm.
Descent
Oh, yeah.
in
When was that?
2010,
20
I think.
Yeah, early
2010.
2010s.
I think, and then obviously with the resurgence of like YouTube and social media and stuff, that game was the first one that really skyrocketed the indie
Mhm.
space. And then we
Yeah.
started to see games using those mechanics. And then it seems to be you'll get a trendsetter, if you will, using a different mechanic in horror, and then you'll see the resurgence of that throughout, and then we get something new. And I think like at the current one at the moment is the retro PS1 horror
Yeah. Mhm.
style. I think that's really making a big resurgence at the moment in horror, and with that, it's quite well. I wouldn't say it's very easy to develop any games anyway, but the mechanics and stuff that you use to develop these kind of games, it's a lot more accessible now as well
Definitely.
with the different game
Yeah.
engines and stuff. So if you've got a really great idea, you could have a couple of people behind you, or even just by yourself, you can create these huge narrative horror games.
For sure.
Yeah. And I've thought a lot about how, like, especially in the indie space, as you mentioned, like, I feel like there's been an explosion over at least the past like 10 years or so. And
Mm,
that honestly is kind of paralleled by the rise of things like Twitch and like Let's
mm,
Players. Because,
yeah.
like, if you think about it, like, horror is very engaging to watch, both like you watching it and you watching someone else. And like, there's like rewatchability value in it because it's like, if you already know what's going to happen, you can watch someone else play it for the first time and see how they're going to react to a certain moment. Because like, I mean, arguably, Five Nights at Freddy's wouldn't be as huge as it was today if it hadn't gone viral when Markiplier played it. It was just one of those like serendipitous things where two things that were on the up and up kind of exploded at the same time. I don't know. I'm just really fascinated by that. It just was like a perfect storm kind of scenario for the genre, I think.
Yeah, I think going back to about Resi 7 as well, being like the part where like the obviously not the original horror franchise, but the one that kind of popularized survival horror in particular, going back to its roots almost. That followed on from God, it was like 3 years before or something when we had PT, wasn't it? That
Yes, that was 2014, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then obviously kind of the myriad of PT clones that existed kind of in the interim. Everything was trying to be that, but then a mainstream AAA, Capcom no less, did it and made it work in that kind of full game as well. So that's kind of been a huge part of it. But then I think, as much as I love all the big AAA, like the Resident Evil remakes and stuff, I think the part that's been most interesting for me has been the games that play like the old Resident Evils, but they're like indie ones like Tormented Souls, or some of the new ones that are coming out like Echoes of the Living, or like last year's Signalis and all this sort of stuff. It's like that feels like it's like being a kid again almost. It's like back in the 90s, and like this game that exactly like I used to play when I was sitting in front of my old grey PS1.
Yeah, the sort of nostalgia value is really interesting with like how things are, going back to like pixel art or like you said, the PS1 sort of style. It's fun. It's both nostalgic, but it's also like doing things that are new, which I think is really cool as like technology has advanced. So it's this really fun kind of dual factor to it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So what games have stood out for you guys in terms of like if you had to kind of, I don't know, Desert Island Discs, but Desert Island horror games, which ones would you take away with you from?
Oh,
I can't do that to me, Phil.
I know.
And nowhere, man. Oh,
That's so hard.
right now it would be Alan Wake 2. I love that game. It's amazing. And I'm really enjoying it. So I think that would definitely be on there. I really like horror games that are disguised as not horror games as well. So I'm not saying I would take Doki Doki Literature Club to a desert island because I feel like it would be a very bad time. But I like stuff like that, and like Bug Snacks where it's got that like horrible twisty ending, and things like Hollow Knight as well. Like that's one of my all-time favorite games ever, it's not a horror game. It's a Metroidvania that's quite sweet and cute, but it has all of these melancholy horror influences that kind of push the narrative and how you perceive it in different ways. And you hit somewhere like Deep Nest in that and you're like, oh brother, it's time. So I think Alan Wake 2 and Hollow Knight would definitely be up there for me, and then probably Dredge if I'm stuck on an island, just because getting out on the boat, getting some fishing done, and then I'd be like, oh, it's just me on my island still stuck here, and that would be quite nice. So
Yeah, that's such a tricky question, especially because like my taste in horror is kind of all over the place. Like of course my all-time faves like would be, probably like Resident Evil 4 because I have been like an Aeon shipper since I was like 12 years old. But apart from that, like, the big AAA, very flashy, exceptionally polished, very long-standing IP. But also I love like one of my I always kind of wonder like what it says about me that one of my like comfort games is the Little Nightmares series. Not sure about that, but I do love that game so much. Everything from the creature design to the soundtrack and just the concept of like being small and scared and like little in a world that is big and terrifying because like everyone kind of knows what that feels like. Everyone's been a child at some point in their life. That and then I really love like I'm such a sucker for like really old school like adventure game style like point and clicks. Like
yes.
So simple, but so effective. My game of the year last year was the excavation of Hobbs Barrow, which is like just a little point and click. There isn't any like jump scares or anything, but the sense of dread just builds and builds and builds and builds. And like it becomes oppressive by the end. And it's just like so masterfully done. So I don't know. I'd probably go with like the RE4 remake. I do include Separate Ways in that because again, Ada Wong, my love. And then Little Nightmares and yeah, let's go with Hobbs Barrel. Why not?
Quite the mix. All
I know. I said my tastes are all over the place.
yeah, no, I know what you mean. I mean, Little Nightmares will be the one. Like I said, the only horror game that like my wife plays, like which, she got it on the Switch, and like one of the first non-Animal Crossing games she beat all the way through in like years. But the noises out of her when she's like playing it, and something happens or something jumps out is something to behold.
Oh, have you put her on Bramble, the Mountain King? Like,
Oh,
as
Bramble's great.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah,
That's
that's a really good
another.
one.
That's a good like the Little Nightmares like follow on kind of same sort of style, but amazing fairy tale, the horribleness.
Yeah. Oh no,
Yeah.
she watched me play, and then she got very upset when the gnomes got squashed. So
Oh my god! Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Me
Fair
too,
enough.
though. Me too, though. That was they did not deserve that.
No.
Oh, I was leading them through the bear traps. Like, if you can't follow me, then you're gonna get trapped.
No.
what that says, I will leave to the audience.
Yeah,
Oh.
that one's beautiful though.
Mm.
Yeah, that's definitely been
Yeah.
one of my favorite games this year. I think because that's probably the thing that always surprises me. Like everyone kind of gets big hype for the big things, and obviously Resi 4 was great. I haven't played Dead Space Remake yet, but I've heard good things about that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Blind.
Alan Wake's fantastic, but then it's like all the like smaller ones, like Bramble. I don't know if small is the right word, but indie, like they're the ones that kind of get you, and you go, oh, this is really really good. And there was another one called Killer Frequency where you play as a DJ. Which no horror in terms of like you're not ever in physical danger, but it's just a great experience, like in terms of that kind of 80s slasher vibe with some really great tunes to go with.
Yeah. No, I just find that indie horror is really good for always surprising you,
Yeah.
just with the like different mechanics or different ways to play. And I find
Sure.
that's because it really it jolts you, like it jars with you. Like this doesn't usually happen in games, and then it just takes you on that different narrative way through.
For sure. I always think of Buddy Game Simulator 1984 as well, which I only played this year, and like another favorite of like console releases that came out this year, because just every single time it changed, I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What's happened? And that's like that felt like the heart of like indie gaming, where you start off with your text-based narrative, then you get a little bit of kind of wandering around as a little sprite, and then it slowly gets like more and more detailed, let's say. But yeah, just those sort of things I always think are incredible. And the indie sphere of horror gaming is just constantly mind blowing. I have no idea how these people A have the ideas to come up with such brilliant stories, and then B have the craft and the talent to bring them to life as well. Like it's just I'm in awe. I'm in awe.
I know, because I was really surprised recently by Don't Scream.
Oh, I haven't heard
Just
of that
how
one.
he came up with the marketing idea and then built the game around that within like 6 months or something. And it's just like, how?
Amazing.
Game devs, man.
That's the one where literally the game ends if you scream, isn't it? Or you make a sound. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I think I
Does
saw
it like record you?
Yeah, I think I saw a tweet saying if you fart really loudly, that will also count as a scream.
Yeah.
It's probably anything that like trips the decibel marker or whatever. Yeah, is that the one that's also like it's filmed in like the woods?
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, it takes you to different locations, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's all the jump scares like randomized, so it's not like you can predict it either. It's every
Oh,
playthrough
that's
is different.
neat. Yeah.
So
And to be fair, a fart is a scream of the ass, so I do think that you should fail for that one.
Hey,
That's a quote to put on a t-shirt. That
Yes.
oh geez.
Uh,
Yeah, I really loved for a while there. There was this trend, and especially indie horror, with like, in the very beginnings of using like AI packages within horror games specifically, where like if a game noticed like what sort of things freaked you out, it would like throw more events at you that were based on certain things, like that it would basically learn the player's behavior as it went. There were like only a couple of games that really tried to use those kinds of mechanics, but I really enjoyed that, and I feel like now that maybe technology has advanced, that could be a really interesting avenue for like someone to pick it back up again and like run with that baton. Because yeah, there's so many like little sort of like gimmicky sort of things, like, oh well, don't, you can't scream, or like the game is like watching you, kind of things that can really create such a unique sort of realm of like play for the game to be built around. I don't know, it's just fun, and indies have way more freedom to just try new things, see how it goes. Yeah.
I quite like the Until Dawn methodology of just quizzing you on what you're scared of and then making sure it's in there as well, like at the beginning. Where it's like, talk to this psychologist. Do you like spiders or rats? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh no.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or just what's the actor who plays him? Because I think like his character model in that was very Uncanny Valley, and then when he was like
Yeah.
right in the face in the camera, that was enough. It was like, whoa.
Oh, I think
That
it's
was very
Pip Torrens. Yeah.
it was very personal space. Yeah. I was like, oh. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'd love to see because that's classic Hideo from obviously Metal Gear, where obviously with the Psycho Mantis battle, I'd love to see more games interact with you outside of the game. So sort of like how it texts you or something, or interacts you out of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you're
Eternal
just watching
Darkness
that kind of
style.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah,
good.
that game was ahead of its time with,
Oh god, yeah. So underappreciated that one.
so like I recently just watched a playthrough of it again, because like it's one of those that is probably considered almost lost media at this point if it hasn't been like carefully conserved. But it's just brilliant. Like some of the stuff that it pulled off way back in like 2001 is like really impressive from a design standpoint. I'm just like, dang, they were going fourth wall break like constantly. It
Oh,
was great.
exactly. I loved
It
it,
was
like when
great.
your head exploded, but you didn't die. You just carried on. But it's just one of those moments that would be like, oh my god, what's happened? You're like, oh, I'm still alive. What's going on?
Or it would make it look like your TV shut off. Like it
Oh
would just
yeah.
start to like mess with you in all those kinds of ways. That's just very smart.
Yeah.
I think one of the things like nowadays as well, if you had a game that like was reacting to how you played and like trying to beat you on those terms, especially like more advanced AI type stuff, and then seeing how that comes up, how that fares against like speedrunners would be.
The speedrunner is like, I am not locked in here with you. You are locked in here with me. This is my show now.
Yeah, poor AI. What we got it into. But that's that's kind of an interesting thing as well, because you mentioned about like indies having more freedom, which I agree with. Like, there's a lot more innovation there in terms of being able to go do something and not necessarily worry whether a gigantic multi-billion-dollar company's like its profits are riding on it and whatever else. That I think leads to more innovation in horror and seeing more things, but it also feels like it's not until the AAA space then starts making good horror, and so that's when more people start to take notice, which is, I suppose, why we've got this whole golden age talk now, because there's more AAA doing it, even though indie games have been doing it for however long. It's kind of an interesting thing, but it's also like, I don't know how to feel about it. I think I suppose it's the thing there about whether that's a good thing, as in the indies are kind of pulling the AAA in the right direction, or whether the AAA kind of then grabs it and then goes, right, now we'll standardize it and sanitize it and make it more marketable. And
I don't know. I think it's always a good thing when people get, I don't know, when people make stuff that they love. It's definitely amazing. And indie game makers are always doing that. They're always making something they love, and I think that AAA kind of comes into that as a more like heavyweight marketing figure in that equation. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's something that draws attention back to the like progenitors of it as well. So like, you know, you get something that feels brand new in the AAA space, and then there's going to be creators and, you know, fans who are like, hey, and if you love that, this is right here as well. Like, and these are the influences that we've drawn from, or that this game has taken from, you know, other places as well. I think it opens up the conversation to draw people into different spaces and populate niches a bit more. So I definitely think it's, as much as I understand you saying that you're not sure how you feel. Obviously, if it's capitalizing or stealing from somewhere, terrible. But if it's there to celebrate the genre and say, hey, that's a great idea, what can we do with it if we put it in this scenario? I think that's part of like the creative process, and that everybody benefits from getting more good stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because to bring it all back, like obviously to like Resident Evil again, like they had their formula, didn't they, of how they played their games and how you play through them. Then they became playing with all these different ways of like first person, third person, that kind of thing. And I think that changed how the AAA felt, especially. They're not afraid now to experiment and change how you play and that kind of thing. I think
Yeah.
that feeds the cycle of it all. So indie feeds into it, and then AAA takes it, advances it, and then you can see that in the indie space again.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you look at fashion, like when you look at super high couture fashion, like that is, fashion houses love that. People who are massive fashion fans love that, but it's not really a mainstream general populace thing. Like it's kind of
Yeah.
like it's very up there, elite level. This is what the fashion houses do. And that's what drips down through society into like your H&Ms, your Primarks. Like they'll take something from there and spin it out into like the affordable mainstream version. And that's kind of how trends are set. And it's the same sort of thing with the indies, where you've got kind of these beautiful crystallized like gold standard ideas, and then someone can go, hey, and let's put it in this scenario, let's put it in this scenario. And I definitely don't think having money and being AAA means that it's not got heart behind it, because the directors and game makers are like, and devs are just some of the most passionate, lovely, beautiful, like just heartfelt people I've ever met in my life. I've never met a dev who wasn't just totally in love with what they're making, and I think that's true across all types of studios as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, from a game developer perspective, a lot of people who work at big AAA studios, they also make their own stuff like on the side, because they want to play and experience like what can I try differently? I mean, the big thing, of course, that is different in the AAA space, at least in my own personal experience, is that you might have to like convince a bunch of stakeholders that something is worth like making. So if we have like an indie sort of renaissance in the horror space, you can then turn around to these big corporations who definitely like, you know, this is capitalism. They want to make money. So you can go, hey, look at how this is happening on a small scale. We can now take this as like a case study and make a case that like you should fund us to do something like this on a larger scale. And then yeah, the cycle kind of goes back around. So I know sometimes like it's easy to kind of pit indies against AAA, but like we're all game developers, you know, we all know each other. It's a very small industry. So like even if someone's working at a AAA company, they're like, oh yeah, my friend made that game, you know, like the small indie thing. So yeah, I agree. I think, you know, it's a, regardless of, you know, who publishes it, when people are having fun in the genre and pushing boundaries in the genre, like that's what matters.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'd like to say, from what the devs we've spoken to, we always get the kind of impression that they're basically just kind of exactly like us, that grow up on the same sort of games, and
Oh yeah.
you know, very excited to be able to make their own product and all that sort of thing. So I think when I kind of expressing that cynicism, I absolutely don't want it to be seen as
Yeah,
about the
totally.
devs. It's I think, but Yeah, just in the recent context of like loads of layoffs and all this sort of stuff, and it's all being about
Yeah.
the money men in the suits and whatever else. It's that's kind of the part where it's like I suppose the Disneyfication of everything, like the same thing that we see in like TV and movies of just everything becomes more and more samey, not because of the people who want to make stories, but because of the people who control the
It's the
purse strings.
IP.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
this is safe. We know we'll get a return on this versus we might not make as much
Exactly.
profit.
But then
Exactly.
I think with horror, like I just don't think you see that. You know what I mean? Like even when it's sequels or things that they're building on, like I don't think you see a return to the same sort of thing. Even with your Resident Evils and your Silent Hills and your sprawling massive franchises that have staples to them, it's so experimental on every level. Like they always want to figure out a new way to scare you because that's what the heart of the genre is. It's like where's the
Yeah.
surprise? Where's the change? Where's the evolution of something that makes it into a thing you've never seen before? So it is just such a unique genre in that sense as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
yeah.
sorry.
I was just going to say, I think Alan Wake 2, to be fair, is probably like the best example of that. With there's so much in that I just like not expecting, genuinely like whoa.
Oh my
I
god,
mean, Remedy has kind of made that their calling card at this point.
Mm.
So, like, with Control and with the first Alan Wake, they basically are like, hey, we as a studio, we kind of make these kinds of things. And that's another way that they can then, of course, show, people funding them, like, hey, we can do this and we have a track record of doing this. So I feel like they have a little bit more of a license to like be weird, which I absolutely like commend them for. I think more studios should go for it and just make things that are weird because it clearly works. If
Yeah.
A24 is like any kind of a bar, like yes, it clearly works. People like
Yeah.
things that are kind of weird and out there. But yeah, it is tricky, especially in AAA when you have to think about things like numbers. When it's like all you really want to do is make a game that you love and that you really you put your heart into because yeah, us game devs, we wouldn't do this if we didn't love games,
No, exactly.
capitalism.
Yeah.
I know. But yeah, it's and like so much of it, horror is also like you said, it doesn't go back to the same sort of stuff because it is a reflection of like what the world is also dealing with. And as time goes on, it's always going to be something different. Like some of the best horror films of recent years have been grappling with lots of very like present issues. And the genre has always done that. I mean, that's like a staple. So in a way, like it is a feature of the genre in itself that it's not samey, but you are totally right about like the IP-ification and like the consolidation of like, oh well, it's got to be this IP, it's got to all be like this, but that's because of the folks up top,
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I also think the use of the new emerging technologies that we've got as well, like sort of VR coming in now, you're starting
Yeah.
to see a lot more games adapting to VR, and I think also games where you can play it in first person and third person, like how Resident Evil's now started to do it. You can play through 7 in like VR and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see how that moves on, and I think we are seeing a lot more games now giving you a lot more of a choice of how you experience it. You can go play it in first person or third person or VR. It's
Yeah. I just worked on a VR hybrid game that's like spooky in nature. And it's definitely not an easy thing to do, but people are learning how to do it where you can, make it sort of colloquial term for it is flat, which I think is really funny, where it's like it's either flat or it's VR. But being able to make both,
yeah,
that's cool. And it also really, really helps with accessibility in a lot of ways. And seeing
definitely.
horror games are often one of the genres where like accessibility seems really prioritized in an odd way. Like especially these big like AAA, stuff. It's like it's often the little like the smaller like horror projects that are really, really being like, hey, let's make this as accessible as possible, which rules.
Sure. I think the genre has always been about kind of like the weirdos all ganging together, isn't it? Kind of the misfits, the all
Yeah.
this sort of thing. Like people all coming together to find a place that's theirs and making a community out of it. And I think accessibility is like paramount to that happening. Like everybody's invited, everybody's involved. Let's make this as wide ranging as possible, as physically possible.
Yeah.
On from like the technology point though, I think AR still hasn't had its day, you know. Like
No.
I really want to
Yeah.
see the most incredible horror game where I'm walking through my house and like things are actually coming out at me. You know what I mean? I want to put on a VR headset and
Yeah.
be like, ah, my God, like it's in the house. I think that would be so cool. But I don't feel like there's been a title that's totally smashed that boundary yet.
No. No, definitely.
Yeah.
not. I'd love to. I've seen a few videos about you know, where you wear the vests and then you feel the damage that you get in the
Yeah.
games. I'd love that, especially in a horror game. Just
Oh
imagine
yeah, I'd
getting your
love
head
to.
sliced off and you're just like
Love to
shocking
get
you like that.
stabbed.
Yeah.
Just don't wear that
no.
headset. What's the one where like when you die it kills it?
Oh
Yeah.
yes, it's I
Oh
remember that one.
God.
Yeah.
How are you gonna play like Resident Evil Village and like actually get your hands just like demolished every
Oh.
5 minutes? Like,
Literally. Nobody tell Mike Flanagan this technology exists.
No, please don't.
The hand mangler himself.
Yeah.
That's
Or
poor
being able,
Ethan
yeah.
Winters.
did he do that video? Like the video where you got like someone had the fake hand next to the real hand because they had the mirror there,
Oh
and then
yeah. Mhm.
and then they hit it with a hammer. So
Yeah.
the same principle, but with obviously with
Yeah.
Ethan Winter's hand on Village, and it's just
Poor Ethan in his hands.
yeah. I don't know. Someone obviously had a thing that I think when them games were being made, like, well,
Yeah.
he's got 2 hands. We need to fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had that RE7 DLC as well, where you played that extra game and your hand was in the
Oh,
in the hand trap.
in the
Yeah, you're right. And doesn't Mia like saw off his hand at one point too
Yeah.
in the base game?
Yeah, it gets stabbed into the wall and then it just
Yeah.
like hacked off like that, and you're like, ah,
Ethan,
okay.
this poor man in his hands.
Yeah.
yeah. It's a game of 21 or blackjack.
That's the one. Yeah,
Where like the bet is your fingers, like they're like
Yeah.
put in like a machine with little mini guillotines on.
Oh no. Yeah, I don't know. Someone at Capcom just like has a thing against hands. They're like, I hate them. No, it's okay. It's like I read an interview once with Ari Aster, and he was like, yeah, I do a lot of like trauma with heads just because it makes me really uncomfortable, and so I keep doing it. So I don't know. Maybe someone at Capcom doesn't like hands.
For sure. I do think there's like those special places that people have that it's just like always horrible. Like hands, fingers going backwards. Like
Eyes.
it's always
Eyes, oh yeah. Dead Space
like
for me.
any like orifice, like nose, eyes, mouth, ears, like any creatures
Teeth
going in
are
those.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Eyes always
Right.
made me the most like. I mean, it shouldn't anymore because I've had it where I had to get like sample taken off my eye, so like they numbed it and like scraped
Oh.
off parts of it, and it didn't feel a thing. So I know it's
Oh,
not. But
how eerie.
yeah, but it's still when you see it like on the screen or something, and like there's an eyeball and like a needle going into it or something. I think,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Dead Space 2, the amount of like emotional damage Dead Space 2 did with the thing where you have to like stick a needle into your eye, which was like
Oh yeah.
very unnecessary, but I was like, why? Why
Like-
this?
Not explicitly horror, but Baldur's Gate 3 from this year as well. We've got tadpoles worming around your eye sockets, like, and this got this beautiful, like, cinematic opening where someone literally gets a grub squeezing into their eyelid. Like,
Oh
oh,
god.
You
the
know.
horror in that is so good. The dark fantasy, like, leaning. Oh, I could go on about it for ages. Give it an award.
Yeah, that thing's gonna sweep up, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one likes eyes either.
So yeah, we've moved into the body horror section of the discussion.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Sure.
I mean, I think that's probably one of the things where it's probably I don't know if you see it that much on modern horror thing. I'm trying to think of like modern horror games where there's that sort of same level of like focused on like not just making people scared, but making people squeamish, like feel like.
Yeah.
But there's definitely
See.
something in that particularly like even I know it's not a horror film, but going back to the first Terminator where he has to take his eye out because it's
Oh, yeah.
damaged and stuff like that. That was
Yeah. The one
What was
game
it?
I think of, I think it may have come out this year or maybe late last year, but Endoparasitic, where you play as a guy who only has one arm, and I do mean only one arm. Like his other arm and his two legs are ripped off, and you have to like cauterize your wounds. It's like all pixelated, so it's like very
Yeah.
stylized.
Is that you
But
have to reload with your mouth? You have to put the bullets into the gun. There's a
I don't
game
know
that I've
how he
seen
does
recently.
it.
No.
I don't know how he does it, but and then you have a parasite inside of you that because there's been like a parasite outbreak in this lab, and so you keep having to like inject yourself with antidote to keep it from getting to your brain, all while you're trying to survive, and you only have one arm, you know. And so the like squick factor is pretty good with that one. You should check it out. It's
I
a
think
wild one.
I've not played it, but I think I saw something about the dev basically got challenged. Oh, make a survival horror game with where you've only got one hand. It's like
That was correct.
yeah.
Yep. Mhm. That was Ms. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Which
nuts.
which maybe that's the future of horror. Just like make bets with developers. Go, but you can't do this.
That might be like the ticket, honestly, because like us game developers, if you challenge us to do something like that, we're gonna be like, no, I can do that. Like, we're gonna find a way. We're just like that. Unless it's like actually impossible. And then we'll be like, nah, dude, technology's not there yet, you know, but when we can.
I mean, so obviously as hosts and presenters, none of us get to choose any um, of the winners or the nominees for the categories coming up this year. So, do you think that's a good thing? Like, do you kind of like think, okay, I'm at least safe from making a really tough decision on this, like, or do you feel the opposite way of kind of like going, no, but I want to stand there and say this one should win.
Oh man, well, I work for PlayStation, so it would be wrong of me to be like, okay, I'm gonna pick all the PlayStation games.
Yeah, right.
So that would definitely be my speaking from the job that I do right now. But separate to that, I don't know. I love seeing what other people think. I love talking to people at horror games and seeing what their takes are. And then as soon as they say, you know, oh, this is my game of the year, I'm like, you're wrong. It should be this one. So
Exactly.
that's that's my take on it. I think it's really nice to see what's going to come out from everybody's votes and thoughts and our lovely jury coming together. But yeah, I'm sure internally all of the opinions that I'm like, oh, I just like all games are going to be washed away instantly because I'll be like, oh no, it should have been this one. It should have been this one.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
dropping a lot of people messages going, no, actually, you should pick this game, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually relieved that I don't have to like pick because I feel like, especially if you really love the genre, and like especially if you've ever made a game and you kind of like, you know, that saying, like you've seen how the sausage gets made, it's like you understand everything that goes into it. And then for me, like even when a game comes out and it's like, you know, not as good as it could have been, I'm immediately wondering like, I wonder what constraints they were working under to try to make this happen, or like what they were working with in the moment, or like I really like this one feature, or I really like, you know, this. So like I feel like I'm so like conditioned to see the good in everything that like it's so hard for me to objectively pick. I mean, except for like, you know, Resident Evil 4, but that's because, as I said, I've been an Aeon shipper since I was like 12. But that's my own personal allegiances, not my professional ones. So
Oh, I absolutely agree that it's just I've made a career and a living and a lifestyle choice to see the best in everything possible, because
Yeah.
it's just so much nicer that way. And finding
Yeah.
games that you love, or finding parts of games that you love, is just so much more satisfying than trying to rate them all against each other. I think moving away from journalism, when I used to do reviews and all that sort of thing, and into, let me just make a piece on something I really like and let me tell you why. I've just seen your
Yeah.
cat's tail fly past and it was so
Yeah.
sweet. Sorry. But
That's
yeah,
him.
I think it's much more satisfying to go, okay, cool, everything's nice, and these are all the bits that I really, really like. And championing stuff is way more
Yeah.
fun than trying to rate it. So hats off to the jury for having to figure it out.
I know. That's why I'm like, whew, I'm glad I don't have to do that.
Yeah, I think it's the sheer volume of releases we had this year as well. Because like
Yeah.
I keep the calendar of like what games have come out, and it's like last week 5 games came out in one day, and it's just like, how can I possibly play all these games and
It's
make
impossible.
and make the proper choice
Yeah.
of like. I just feel bad. Like I only played a couple of games this year just because of how busy I am and stuff, and then it's just like, how can I make that choice over all these hundreds of games that have come out and everyone's put effort in? And I'm just like, I can't.
I know.
So,
It's hard.
Put into the hands of the people that play these day in, day out, I think it's a lot more responsible, I think, for all the game developers and getting their options of being nominated. So,
Yeah, there's even like, I mean, it's come to the point now where there's games that I've been given codes for at various points, and like I just haven't had the chance to play them. It's just like,
Yeah.
like this looks really good. It looks like something I'd really enjoy, but I just haven't had the physical time to play it. It's just insane. But yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. Ash, about like rate or not rating games, because that's one thing. Like I'll do reviews of games, but I'll avoid saying this is X amount out of 10, because it's like I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. I just say this is good and these are the good things, or this is not so good, or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's definitely something I've learned as I've gotten older and matured in the industry. I think just finding something you really like and focusing on that within a game, or for a game totally, is just the way to go in it. Like I want to see everybody talking about stuff they really love all the time, and then going, right, if that's great, I'm going to play it, rather than someone doing like a 10-hour breakdown of all the stuff they hated in a film or a game, when it just feels like, it just feels like just relentlessly, try not to swear, but just putting someone down. There we go. For the sake of it.
Like, I get it, if you're a content creator, that kind of stuff gets clicks. I get it. You got to get your clicks, like whatever. But yeah, when you start approaching it from a like, if someone made a decision that like you didn't agree with on the development side, or you didn't like, just sitting there and thinking like, I wonder what drove them to make that decision, is I feel like a lot more it's just like a lot healthier for you. I feel like when it comes to, you just kind of start looking at it as like, oh, I wonder why that happened, as opposed to like, they're awful and the game is bad. Like, I don't know. Approaching it with like, this is what I love about it. Were there things that, weren't as I'd hoped? Sure. But focusing on what you really love, I feel like it's good for you. It's good for the genre. People need to know what's working as much as they need to know what's not,
exactly.
There's definitely there's definitely games I don't like, or not necessarily my thing,
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah, of
Or
course.
even ones you've been looking forward to, you're a bit disappointed. But I always find like I'll kind of like, okay, I didn't really enjoy that, and move on with because talking constantly about things you don't like is exhausting. It's like, whereas sitting here and going, right, all these horror games and all the things I love about them, you could do that for hours and hours and hours on end. And there's like, it energizes you because you're talking about something like you genuinely enjoy, and like in some cases special interest territory, or everything else. But I can't get this where I'm not liking something. It becomes a lot harder to maintain the conversation and do that. I find just like, it's not so good. Anyway, move on to something that is.
But it's also when you use your hard-earned money to buy these games, it's like you don't naturally spend money on it to then go and look for the bad. You look for the good. And even if you've bought the game, You want to play it all the way through and go, okay, let's find something that's good within this that's made it worth my while.
Yeah, and buy
Like-
games that you're likely to like as well, not ones that
Exactly.
you like.
Yeah.
I'll spend, I don't know,
Yeah.
60 quid to on a game that I'm probably gonna hate, so that I can make an angry video about it. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that, and I get the space for people being like, contrary to what I have also said, I do think the space to say like, this didn't work for me for these explicit reasons that are well reasoned and justified, and I'm going to move on from it, rather than just bad, terrible, never do this again.
Yeah.
Unless it's like offensive, then
Yeah.
then let's go. Then let's go.
That's different. Yeah.
I mean, I will say, I think obviously that stuff still happens with horror games as well, but it feels like there's, or certainly whether it's just like the kind of people like watched and like hung around with and talked to, it feels like there's less of that, because it's like, again, it's a genre that's originally centered around the misfits and the outcasts and the people who don't fit in with like what's normal and everything else, and then it fits into these like themes of like, societal anxieties, personal anxieties, and all the stuff that, if you stuck that in a game that wasn't horror, the first thing like half the people playing it would go screaming about it being too political, and whereas like that's what horror does all the time. That's the kind of thing. So it's like,
That's the genre.
That's going back to which was the of the Dead in the supermarket? Was it Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead?
There's
Dawn
one
of
in
the
a,
Dead.
a shopping mall. Is the is the
Yeah,
dawn.
sorry, shopping
Yeah,
mall,
Dawn
I
of
mean,
the
not
Dead.
supermarkets.
I was like, hot dogs,
Was
Whatever
it-
it is.
three
There was one
zombies.
in a supermarket?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Zombieland,
Yeah.
to be fair.
Mm.
I'm just imagining zombies running around Tesco now, and
We need that.
That's normal. That's
Shaun
every
of the
day.
Dead.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
28 days later.
Yeah.
Actually, having worked in Sainsbury's previously, like that's a Sunday, like at 9:45 before it opens at 10 o'clock. Like the crowd outside is very much.
That's so funny.
But I may have lost the track of what I was actually making with that, but
Something about Dawn of the Dead being in a shopping mall.
yeah. Oh yeah, about sorry, the
Fine.
kind of making those like social points, and like it all being about it's all basically metaphors and analogies, and like it feeds into something real, and sometimes in really fun ways, I think, as well. That's the other thing, is like horror that makes us laugh as much as it makes us go, "Whoa," is always really good. Which is another reason why like certain sequences in a certain game, I won't name again because it feels like a name dropping one game too much. I don't want to appear like just talking out. They're just basically going,
That's the game I'm thinking of too.
But yeah, I think that's really always really good to think, is like, just because it takes those absurd things and just like to terrify you, but also like you have to break the tension occasionally to like do that, and obviously the daftness springs through, and whatever else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people, I've seen takes of like, well, I don't think horror comedy really like works as a genre. And I'm like, yes, it does. What are you talking about?
It's the
like
same thing. Oh my
the
goodness.
yeah,
Cornerstone.
the urge to scream and the urge to laugh are literally like a hair apart. Like they're so similar. And when you think about it, like, yeah, a lot of stuff that's in horror games, like we were joking about like Ethan Winter's hands, like that's funny. Come on now. Like this poor man's hands are getting abused. Like that they really are two sides of the same coin. And so I love horror comedy. Like a very large part of my writing career has all been horror comedy, just because it's fun. And like comedy is one of the other genres that really likes to, mirror things that are going on in like the greater world space, like horror does. So they're actually like best friends. So I love when games kind of use both of those simultaneously.
they're both genres that elicit a reaction. They're both like after that like guffaw moment, whether it's a oh god or a haha, and
Yeah.
like to combining them just it totally makes sense. I think when you hit something, but it's like clowns in it. Like when you see a clown, do you want to laugh? Do you want to cry? Do you want to do a bit of both? And it's usually the latter answer. Like there, it's a bit of both. Like there's stuff that's so absurdly funny that it's scary, and there's stuff that's so absurdly scary that you just laugh because there's no other option to you to that. And like going to the cinema with all your friends and watching a horror movie and then laughing all the way through. I say, commenting on all the teens I see in cinemas now, that's what must be what they do. But yeah, they that's always been like part of the genre as well, is having a laugh, having a goof off when you're watching a horror movie, putting one of those on and everybody making fun of it, and then secretly being a little bit scared afterwards and leaving your light on in your room. Like they just go hand in hand.
Yeah, it just gets you through those moments as well.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, although I can't say. I mean, clowns are probably one of those ones where I'm not scared of them as such, but it's always one of those things where it's like, but why?
Yes.
Yeah.
What are you hiding? Why don't you look like you?
Like that trend when people were dressing up as clowns and appearing on street corners and stuff was so freaky.
In like 2016 or whatever, like
Yeah.
that was bizarre. That was wild.
It's like it sounds like a horror movie like line that they've written themselves in it, but
Yeah.
it's just but real. Art the Clown, but before his time.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something about, clowns, mimes, like sports mascots, animatronics. We just don't like them. We don't like that we can't get an accurate picture of like, is it a person? Are they emoting? Why aren't they emoting normally,
Mhm.
It's just something in like the lizard brain that's like, don't like that.
That just reminds me of there's this episode of Supernatural where like there's, I forget what it is, ghosts possessing costumes or something like that. But like the first one is like this giant rabbit costume, and the guy's just like got it stuck on his head in the jail cell, like just this smiling rabbit with blood splashed across its face.
Oh, Silent Hill vibes.
Very much so, especially because he was like dead silent as well. So just like as if zooming in on his face was just like extra creepy.
Yeah, we just don't like that, I think. Just don't like not being able to see who's in there.
No, I think you can also find horror in anything, can't you? Like I kind of like the horror where you see spaces where that should be full of people or full of like sounds and stuff, and you see it completely empty, like
Liminal,
like a hospital or a school or something. Like,
Oh my god, that was Wolverhampton Town Centre the other day. I tell you, I went uptown. I went uptown for a drink, and I came up. It was midnight on a Saturday night, and there was not a soul in the town centre. It was really weird. It really freaked me out. There wasn't even anybody in the chicken shop. I was like, "Where is everybody gone?"
exactly.
It turns out it's just Wolverhampton, but like it was just a shocker.
No, it's just those moments to make you feel like you are alone, and literally has everyone literally disappeared.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like I went to Disneyland one day with a friend, and it was like an unusually quiet day in Disneyland. And my friend was like, I'd never been before, but my friend was like freaking out because she was like, where is everyone? Like it was apparently very strange that it was like empty because it's like, this big theme park. Yeah. It's weird. There's something weird about that too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because I think there is a VR game coming out that's based in an abandoned theme park.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's Happy Funland, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, it's all
Doesn't sound happy or fun.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But yeah,
just
exploring that in VR.
Just while we were on the subject of like unnatural things like the mascots and also weird spaces and stuff, we were away for a week and like came back, and then it was only yesterday, Halloween, as we're recording this. Obviously, it's 1st of November. That my wife noticed an ornament in the house that she had neither of us had ever laid eyes on before. Now, this
Mhm.
thing that appeared out of nowhere.
Don't like that.
So it turns out our
Really?
friend who was looking after the house had just put it there and waited to see, and it took us like till Halloween to notice. But
Oh my gosh.
there was a moment of like shiver down the spine and just, where did that come
Yeah.
from?
Are they
That's
recording you
weird.
through that, Phil? Need to check if
I don't think there's cameras or anything in there, but
Oh, you never
Well,
know.
we're talking about how technology's moving on. I don't know.
Exactly.
Maybe a
um,
mic.
yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm afraid to smash it in case I incite a curse of some kind. So
Right.
Yeah, that
That's
seems
the
like
risk you run.
inviting trouble.
So I think before we went off, I mean that was a very good. That's the kind of tangent that I like going off on conversations because it leads you into weird and wonderful places. But before that, we were talking about like the horror game awards, and I suppose game awards in general, because it's going to be just the week before ourselves is the lesser game awards, the Jeff Keighley's show.
That
He
guy.
tries, bless him. But I will be very interested to see this year with horror making a resurgence whether we'll see much in the mainstream game awards, and wonder what your thoughts are on that, because obviously that was one of the reasons that me and Will set this up initially, was because like that's not really generally what we've seen, whether it's like last year with great games like Signalis and others, or Tormented Souls the year before, just never make an appearance at all. But will that change this year, do we think, or?
I actually helped out with Tormented Souls. I just realised I've never said that anywhere before. But
Cool.
I just remembered when that was said, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to say it. But yeah, I helped. They were in like an email chain where we'd pay early builds of the game and then give feedback and stuff, which was very fun. I love Tormented
Cool.
Souls. I'm glad that's been brought up. But yeah, there's my addition to that question, which is a total tangent. Get the haunted figure out again. That's Ash's haunted figure on the mantle. Did someone say Tormented Souls? I got something to say.
No, I love that. I think maybe. I mean, it's definitely a possibility, especially with like, I think Resident Evil 4 is like one of the best selling horror games of all time, mainly because they've re-released it like 15 times, the Skyrim treatment. But like, I think maybe that one could be a contender for a variety of awards. I think probably like Alan Wake would probably be up for best narrative, but it's definitely probably the bigger ones, I think.
Yeah.
As much as I would love to see more indie horror getting recognized, especially at like the big, really flashy awards like the Game Awards, I think it's probably mostly gonna be the really, super polished ones that would get nominated. I don't know if they will win, just because, horror is it's very hit or miss. People like it or they don't, that kind of thing. But
I do think
um,
there's a way more like voracious appetite for it, especially like, that we're even
yeah,
having conversations about it being the golden age of horror. I think people will want to see some representation to be like,
Definitely.
right, okay, it's spooky season all year round, 2023, let's go. I do think that will influence there being a bit more of a darker edge to some of these ceremonies, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see where that goes, because it's kind of that tipping point where if everyone's like, yes, let's see some more horror games, let's get more of this in here, then we'll get even more of an upswing, and then it'll eventually level out again, or everyone will go, oh no, too much of that, let's go and look at some other stuff again, and something else will come in vogue as it gets trendy again. But yeah, it's I think kind of trends all over have been horror leaning. It's been kind of wild, like watching TikTok and Instagram very much go into the noughties emo vibe again. So like seeing that come around, like
Yeah.
like seeing everything I liked like as a teenager become popular again. It made me feel very weird. It made me feel very unsettled.
yeah,
But it all ties in, I think.
I think so too. I mean, there's like a statistic that if one of the greatest like predicaments of economic recessions is actually the presence of goths Like the more the goth subculture rises, like it means that we're about to have an economic recession, going all the way back to the literal goths at the fall of the Roman Empire. So
Hey,
The more you know.
it is like it definitely is trendy at the moment though. Like goths, emos, like alt music, definitely like rock music and all that sort of stuff as well is definitely getting out there a bit more. Horror movies are coming in. It's literally like that like genre of person, genre of person. You know what I mean? It's like it
Us.
is. Yeah, it is. There's loads of different ways that it's all coming in and coming together. So. I would like for that to last a bit longer, and hopefully that is symbolized by more horror game, business going on and recognition and celebration.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, it's going to be a really difficult call, I think, because this is a year where just like so many big games and good games have come out across all genres.
Yeah.
Because even like your Dead Space and RE4 and Alan Wake 2 are going to competing against Tears of the Kingdom, Baldur's Gate.
Oh my god, I forgot all these things came out this year.
How did I forget about Tears of the Kingdom? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
How does that happen? Yeah, that came out this year. It's been nuts.
Spider-Man 2, which I'm still slowly working my way through. But all these like gigantic games which people have been waiting years for as well. So
Speaking of Spider-Man 2 though, horror flavored, am I right? Like speaking about the horror influence, like Venom, come on. It's like all of these little tendrils coming in, even just the box art of it being Spider-Man and the little Venom tentacles. I just think, I do think that it's a bit everywhere. Spookiness is everywhere at the moment.
I love it. I'm here for
Long
it.
may it continue.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Although the one thing we haven't really got as much of yet is horror video games in the video game adaptation kind of surge that's going on, because obviously we had The Last of Us, we had Five Nights at Freddy's, but then otherwise it's Mario. Everything else is just immediately flushed out of my head, but there's been lots of video games adapted that are not horror. So
I think
we had that one questionable Resident Evil one, Welcome to Raccoon City.
Yeah.
It was that.
I think the naughties
I've repressed the Resident Evil adaptations.
For sure. Yeah, the naughties had the video game adaptation horror stuff down. Like that was when they all happened, and now we're in like the PS1, like you say, that resurgence of old school stuff again. It's like I think people are moving away from the remake of a remake ideal and trying out different stuff. But
definitely. But
the Iron Lung
Return of
movie.
Silent Hill.
What's that?
You got Return of Silent Hill coming.
Yes.
In the near future. And then
There's another one of them is going to be a new film, isn't it? Or supposed to be in amongst the plethora of Silent Hill stuff that was announced.
Maybe.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yeah, I think so. Trying to remember anything from it. It's just there's so many, like they're all just one Silent Hill ball of going, yeah, it's coming.
Sorry, it's a motorcycle.
It's going to be based on Silent Hill 2, isn't it, that one? I think they cast James Sunderland and stuff, haven't they? And then you got the rumours of the Dead Space movie as well, which would be awesome.
I'm making a movie? I didn't even know.
Well, if there's rumours there's like writers being connected to it and stuff, so...
I see.
I mean, a lot of these might be in development hell for God knows how long, but...
Yeah, like the Metal Gear movie and stuff.
I'll wait.
That's
for
true.
you.
SAG-AFTRA is still on strike, so nothing's going anywhere fast.
No.
Yeah. I was surprised about that, actually. I was surprised that like the writers settled before the actors. I always thought it'd end up being the other way around, and they'd want to.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. I was expecting them to come to a deal simultaneously, personally. The fact that like the writers, they're still technically on strike because they're doing so in solidarity with SAG. So like they can't actually go back to work until SAG also gets a deal. But I was expecting, them to kind of like bargain with everyone at the same time. And it doesn't seem like they're doing that. I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see how it affects releases in the future, and will we get a lull, and how will the industry recover from that? that's going to be a really big one.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it'd be COVID part 2, won't it? I think that's why we've had
True.
such a horror resurgence now. Like Annie, you were saying at the start that it comes off societal traumas and reflecting everybody's kind of shared scary moments. Like COVID was the biggest marker of that, and now we're kind of getting everything that's getting finished up and pushed out in the post-pandemic era. So it'll be the post-strike era soon enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we've had so many games this year as well, just because development probably got stalled during COVID, just because, people were working from home and they had to switch to that workflow, et cetera. So like a bunch of big games are just coming out now that probably would have come out over, the last couple of years. But yeah, I'm really curious to see what happens as we move forward with, like, a lot of developers are doing hybrid or like work from home setups. Of course, like SAG-AFTRA can't really do that, so we'll see what
No.
happens. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It'll be interesting to see the unionization, if it does happen, of the video game developer industry as well. Like, obviously with all the layoffs
better.
and stuff at the moment, it'll be interesting
It's
to
better.
see if those jobs and industries do go on strike as well, and how that could affect it.
Yeah, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it does feel like something's got to give at some point with that, because I mean, it's that kind of thing of it obviously just affects the developers immediately, and then kind of all the same things that like gamers will find themselves complaining about with monetization of things and the way it's looked at. That'll all be a symptom of the same
Oh yeah,
same process and the same people. So
Definitely.
yeah. Devs don't like that either. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
yeah, I mean, I will say, I do hope the picture improves somewhat. Not only because obviously it's an industry I want to go into because that's what I'm studying and stuff, but also because as a fan and as a someone who's been so closely involved, I just want all the people who are sitting there with the same interest as me going, yay, horror, to be able to just make all these crazy, funny, spooky, insane little or big projects and just make them all happen, because I don't want it to be a golden age. I want it to be eternal.
Yes, definitely.
100%.
Yep.
So that was kind of a weird note so yeah, I mean, on that kind of note, I suppose wrapping things up a bit, do you want to kind of tell us about kind of what you're looking forward to in terms of what might be coming in the future? Either stuff that's we already have a date for, or stuff that's somewhere in the pipeline in the future, maybe. Like, what's on your most anticipated lists?
That's a good question. Honestly, I feel like I'm just trying to catch up still.
That never ends.
Agree.
Can we hold on for a minute? I have so many games to play.
Honestly, the list is just, it's flowing. I mean, I'm excited for Silent Hill 2. I think we're all excited for Silent Hill 2. There's no escaping it. It's the big looming horror spectre on the calendar at the moment. So
100%.
I'm gassed to see what they do with it.
I think it's the retro PS1 horrors for me. So we got the chance to play Sorry We're Closed at WASD. Was it like a month ago, Phil? I think now.
Yeah,
Release date, yeah.
That was September, so technically 2, but
yeah. So we got to play Sorry We're Closed, and that's a really good game. You should definitely check that out.
Yeah, stronger Silent Hill vibes on that one as well. It's all about like kind of the liminal spaces and like cracks between this world and the other, and using like a third eye to see through all that. So,
and it's also a love sim as well. So it's a really interesting narrative for that. Then obviously with Hollow Body and Holstein, and just how they are changing how you play it and the different mechanics they're adding. It's they're really interesting for me.
Yeah. Oh, Still Wakes the Deep as well. I know I'm talking about
Mm.
the big games, but like I got big games on my mind at the moment. Just with like I have to go by the massive bullet points to keep me through the year to be like, okay, this month
get
is
it.
this month is this. But
Yeah.
Still Wakes the Deep. I think it's just kind of that special brand of horror that really, really will. I know it will upset me. Like, so I don't have like it's not quite thalassophobia of like scared of the ocean and open water, but it's like um I probably best describe it as like I just hate seeing metal in water. It makes me feel really sick.
Mm.
And like oil rigs are like my worst nightmare. So unlike horror
Yeah.
films like based around that, it's like
Yeah.
Underwater is one of the films that scares me the most ever. And I love it. I love watching it, and I'm really excited to see how Still Wakes the Deep makes me like want to be sick. You know what I mean? Like it feels like the next one on from Soma, and then it's got like big monsters in it as well. Like I'm a creature
Mhm.
feature lady. I love a big spooky beast. So monsters, like oil rig horror in the ocean, it's like the most perfect personal melting pot of things that I'm scared of and things that I like, and I'm very
Made for
excited.
you.
Yeah.
It's my hole. It was made for me.
Now, see, I obviously love horror and like being scared and stuff, but if you made something about the things that actually terrify me, like I would not go anywhere near it. Like the big
Yeah.
thing is like the cave diving where they crawl into really tight holes and they have to like inch themselves in, and like if you get stuck, you basically have to be buried alive so no one else gets trapped in there. And if you made a
Mm-mm.
game about that, I would be a million miles in the other direction.
Yeah. It's like the Subnautica flavor, like that. Absolutely. That was big. That was Sick Town for me. Whoa, Vomit
Yeah.
City. Just,
Subnautica,
Yeah.
it's
It's
like
been it's been
Iron
yeah.
Lung,
Mm.
like any
yeah.
of those where it's a tight space and you're like really underwater. It's like I'm not supposed to be here. You know what I mean? Like this is not my habitat.
No.
Like this is not for me.
No. No, I think I think it's the thing of when you're in water and you can't see, and it's just this
Yes.
blank space. That's what gets me.
Oh, it's
Like, I don't
kelp.
mind clear water, but yeah.
Kelp. I really hate seaweed. I hate
Really?
seaweed. Yeah, it's
I
just
don't mind
like
it. I think it's pretty.
no, just like the thought of being in one of those like like those like underground fields where this movement because they're really
Yeah.
tall and long.
Mm.
Like the
Huh?
thought of that touching my skin and I'm being near an oil rig at the same time. Like I think I would just
Your personal
expire.
hell.
Yeah. Ugh.
I've just got an image now of like you two as appearing on like an I'm a Celebrity type challenge where you're like in seaweed and just you going,
Like,
no.
oh, it's so pretty, and you're like, no.
Oh, get it up.
No, for me, the big one that I'm waiting for ever since it was announced is Tormented Souls 2. That's the
Yeah.
one that's kind of like on the right. Well, that and Astral Rot because that's the two things from the two developers of the original Tormented Souls. So it's
Right.
like they're the two like, and that was one of my favorite games. Like, 'cause the second I played it, it was just like more of this, please. Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm probably most. It just came to me, but I'm probably most looking forward to Little Nightmares 3. I just
Mm.
love that series.
Supermassive as well. Oh my
I
goodness.
know.
Love
I was like,
them.
okay. Because Tarsier was, I think, purchased by Embracer, but Bandai Namco owns the IP. Again, back to the whole IP
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested to see what Supermassive does with it because they make cool stuff too. So
Mm.
I'm curious.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'd love a branching narrative, Little Nightmare. Just being like, oh,
Oh gosh,
yeah.
can't even imagine.
It's got co-op and stuff in this time, isn't it? Or it's
Mm.
gonna have.
I think so because the last one was like you had co-op, but it was like an AI. But I
Mm.
think this time it's actually I don't know if it's like couch co-op though or like
I
um
think it is. Don't quote
yeah.
me, but I'm pretty sure it is. I remember seeing a demo at an event. Oh my goodness, I can't remember which one it was. Like this year has just been a flash, but I remember them doing a little live playthrough of Little Nightmares 3, and I think it was both of them in the same room. So that would be cool. I hope it's local.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Mm.
Good spooky times.
Yeah. Well, Supermassive know how to do co-op, to be fair, so that's probably where
True.
their expertise comes in as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm. So lots of interesting stuff on the horizon. And we will, at the Horror Game Awards, we will be talking about, obviously, not just all the great stuff that's come this year and giving out awards to the best, but also looking forward and getting a glimpse of some of the stuff that's still to come in the future as well. So we can all have our appetites whetted, hopefully, and be excited for much more. But before we kind of wrap things up and go, do you guys want to tell everyone where they can find you and how they can support you and what you do? So, Anna, do you want to go first?
Sure. Y'all can find me pretty much on most social platforms as at Anna C Webs. That's where you can find me. I also run a little blog about horror games. I look at their psychology, their design, their narrative. It's called Resident Anna. You can find that on Substack. Hit me up, or you can go to my website, annacwebster.com.
Cool.
Cool.
And Resident Anna is very worth checking out. I am a subscriber myself, so I will
Thank you.
plug that. And Ash, yourself?
Yeah, I'm heading straight over to Resident Anna. I want to read I want to read the Aeon fan fiction. Is what I want to read.
A new article just went live today about Alice Madness Returns and Fran Bow. So if you love your horror girlies, that's the one for you.
Oh hell yes! Oh my god, I'm gonna be over there, straight over there. But you can find me at Ash Millman on everything, I think. And I host a PlayStation Access, so head over to there for fun streams on all sorts of games, as well as video essay content, coverage, news, all sorts, with me and my fellow silly hosts.
And links to all that will be in the description of the video, so do check it out and do show some love and support if you can. It's always much appreciated. And thank you once again to our lovely guests who we'll be seeing very soon, closer than we think, I think, when the awards air. And thanks to everyone for watching, and we will catch you next time.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Right.
This has been Talking Terror, the official podcast of the Horror Game Awards. Thank you very much for listening. Check out the links in the description for more info on where to follow our guests in order to support them and keep up to date with their work. The Horror Game Awards will be airing live on YouTube on Saturday the 16th of December. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel to avoid missing out on what promises to be a very exciting night of awards and game reveals, as well as future episodes of this podcast and other content. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.